Welcome. I'm Catherine Hadro, and this is EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Supreme announcement. The High Court says it will hear a landmark abortion case involving a Mississippi abortion ban. It's the first major abortion case for Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Is it a direct challenge to Roe v. Wade? And what could this mean for the pro-life movement's efforts to end abortion? We speak one-on-one with Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves.
With due respect, there is no medical term like partial birth abortion.
Denial and dodging. HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra sparks controversy after failing to acknowledge an existing federal ban on partial birth abortion. Representative Gus Bilirakis of Florida pressed Becerra on the issue and joins us from Capitol Hill to share his thoughts on Becerra's response.
Walking them out of a place of fear to a place of freedom is our biggest work.
Sisters of Life, a religious community of women consecrated for the protection of human life, speak with EWTN News In Depth host Montse Alvarado to share their work and wisdom as we get an up-close look at their life-affirming mission. In a case that's seen as a direct challenge to Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court announced it will consider whether states can ban abortions before a baby is viable to survive outside of the womb. It's the first major abortion case with Justice Amy Coney Barrett on the bench. The case involves a Mississippi law that would ban abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy. The law has been blocked by lower courts. Supreme Court justices announced this week they will take up Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, but will only consider one question, namely, quote, whether all pre-viability prohibitions on elective abortions are unconstitutional. The state's Catholic Diocese of Jackson and Biloxi have supported Mississippi's pro-life law. The day of the High Court announcement this week, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said President Biden is committed to codifying Roe and suggested the administration would fight any Supreme Court decision that limited abortion.
Over the last 4 years, critical rights like the right to health care, the right to choose, have been under withering and extreme attack, including through draconian state laws. And the president and the vice president are devoted to ensuring that every American has access to health care, including reproductive health care.
Governor Tate Reeves of Mississippi joins us now on Zoom. Governor, welcome to the show. First, what was your reaction when you heard the Supreme Court will be taking up your state's pro-life law?
Well, I was very excited that the United States Supreme Court decided to take up the 15-week abortion ban. I think this is certainly the ideal time for the court to look at it. The fact of the matter is that Roe v. Wade was decided in 1973, and the Casey case was actually decided in 1992. The fact is the science has changed considerably since that time, and every single new piece of information that we get with respect to the formation of unborn babies errs on the side of this is a horrible, horrible thing that is happening in America, and I'm very pleased that the court is going to look at these cases.
The Supreme Court won't hear oral arguments for this case until the fall, and we won't know their decision for likely months after that. But what would your reaction be if your state's pro-life law was the one to chip away at Roe versus Wade and pave a path for it to be overturned?
Well, I'd be ecstatic if our case that gets heard helps us get there. I was actually lieutenant governor of the state and the leader of the state senate when we passed this piece of legislation back in 2018. And so I would be ecstatic. But to be perfectly honest with you, for me, and I think so many other pro-lifers, which state's law gets before the court is not that important. It's just that we see these unborn babies, literally millions and millions of unborn babies that get protected and ultimately get born and hopefully serve very productive lives. And so, again, I'm pleased because I know we have very good counsel. We have good people that are going to make the arguments on our behalf. And so that makes me feel good. But again, this isn't territorial. This is about saving babies in America.
Absolutely. As you shared with me already, and as you put out in your statement responding to the Supreme Court announcement, you highlighted how much more we and the scientific community have learned about the unborn child since the 1973 Roe versus Wade decision. Can you speak more to that?
Well, and I think this is a very important point, because there are those who want to argue that there's only one reason that this court is decided to hear this, and it's because the court has changed. And there's, make no mistake, we are very, very fortunate that President Trump got elected, one of the strongest pro-life presidents in our nation's history, and that he appointed justices to the court that have views similar to ours. But make no mistake, we are not being allowed to hear this case before the court because the court has changed. It's because the science has changed. The science has improved drastically. We now know when you can hear a heartbeat of an unborn child and how to detect it. We now know that the lungs are being formed by this time period of 15 weeks and that the baby has started practicing breathing. We know that many vital organs are in the early stages of formation at this time. And we know that the fact is that an unborn child could live outside the womb at this time. And that's critically important. And we should not allow the decision of one human being to wreck the life of another. And I just believe in my heart that that's exactly what occurs in these late-term abortions.
Absolutely. We have just over a minute left, Governor, but I want to ask you this. This abortion ban, after 15 weeks, passed your state's Congress and was signed into law by your predecessor, former Governor Phil Bryant, before it was blocked by lower courts. Do you believe, Governor, is it the desire of Mississippi residents for this abortion ban to be enacted?
It is the overwhelming view of Mississippians. And by the way, in our state, Republicans are pro-life. There are many Democrats in our state that are pro-life. And so this is the overwhelming view of the people of Mississippi. And at a minimum, I believe that states ought to be allowed to enact the laws that they want to enact when it comes to these issues that are of such importance to my constituents. And so that's why I think it's so important that we're going before the court.
Absolutely. This is huge news. And obviously, we'll be watching this closely in the months to come and when this hearing takes place. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this big week, Governor Tate Reeves of Mississippi.
Thank you.
Joining us now on Skype is Mallory Quigley, Vice President of Communications for the Susan B. Anthony List, and John Bursch, Senior Counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom. Welcome to you both. John, let's start with you. Can you summarize what exactly the Supreme Court will be considering in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization?
A very exciting case. It involves a Mississippi law that protects life beginning at 15 weeks gestation. So at that point forward, the state values the life of the baby and the health of the mother to such a degree that no abortion procedures will be allowed. And the Supreme Court needs to decide whether a state has the ability to regulate abortions after the viability line. That's something that previous court decisions have been confusing about, with the court suggesting that maybe you can't do that, but yet upholding other pre-viability laws, such as those that prohibit partial birth abortions. And so this will be a case that significantly clarifies abortion jurisprudence in this country.
John, so quick follow-up. Is it accurate to say this Supreme Court case directly challenges Roe versus Wade's decision?
Well, I would say it challenges some of the logic of the decision. I don't think anyone should be expecting that Roe versus Wade will be overruled or overturned, because Mississippi's request to the court to hear the case didn't even ask them to rule in that way. But what it does do is it attacks one of the crucial logical underpinnings of Roe, which is this viability line, which doesn't really make any sense, because as science advances, the ability to allow a baby to grow and develop outside the womb later or earlier in the pregnancy increases. And so the life that you could protect in the 1970s is not as much life as you can protect today, which is not as much as you'll protect 20 years from now. So that line really should go.
Mallory, in the effort to end abortion in the United States, how significant is this Supreme Court case?
I think John explained it so beautifully. This is such an impactful moment, because this Supreme Court case is going to allow not only the litigators, but pro-life activists, pro-life personalities in the media, and just, as we're talking to our friends and neighbors, to talk about what abortion laws look like in this country and get at the reality that the United States is one of only 7 countries worldwide to allow abortion beyond all the way up to the moment of birth. And so getting at this extremism and how it is not reflected, the will of the people to protect life is not yet reflected in our laws. This case is going to provide so many opportunities for conversation, education, and changing hearts and minds.
Mallory, as John explained, this case centers around viability and whether abortion can be constitutionally be banned for babies who cannot yet survive outside the womb. What's your pro-life response to that big question?
Yeah, well, the pro-life response there is there really isn't anything that separates, the child who can feel pain, who is able to live outside the womb from, just a little bit earlier. Like all of these lives they have the same inherent dignity and value. And who do we want to be as a nation? Don't we want to protect the most vulnerable among us? And so it allows us to just begin conversations with our neighbors about where they would draw the line. And as we have these conversations that are going to mirror what how the conversation goes down in the court, I think you'll find people that are just kind of starting to question, that core premise of Roe versus Wade. Is a baby's viability outside the womb, is that the marker of when they become a unique individual worthy of protection?
That's beautifully stated. John, a lot has been made in the mainstream media about Justice Amy Coney Barrett's judicial philosophy on abortion. This is her first major abortion case at the Supreme Court. But what's her past record on this? Do we have a clear picture on how she might rule?
Well, we don't have a picture of how she'll rule in an abortion case simply because she hasn't really had one, certainly not in the Supreme Court, but not even in a significant way in the Court of Appeals where she used to serve. But we do know that she is an originalist, a textualist in the mold of her mentor, Justice Scalia. And if you look at the U.S. Constitution, there's nothing about abortion in there anywhere. This is a right that was completely made up by 7 members of the court in the 1970s. And so we would naturally expect that she would be somewhat hostile to that viewpoint, that you can make up as a judge the rights that you want in the Constitution. But really, this isn't one that should come down to any one judge's philosophy. When you're talking about babies that can suck their thumb, feel pain, blink their eyelids, move around, and even use their taste buds to taste whatever their mom is eating, this is something that everybody should be able to agree on. And that's why the overwhelming majority of Americans support restrictions that protect life in the late terms of a pregnancy.
Absolutely. Mallory, we have less than a minute left, but the White House signaled it might fight any Supreme Court ruling that limits abortion. Could the administration or Congress take action that would stifle the effect of a potentially pro-life ruling from the court?
There's no doubt in my mind that the Biden-Harris administration and their pro-abortion allies in Congress will do whatever they can to further enshrine abortion on demand. So we will keep an eye out. They're already looking to dilute the Supreme Court by expanding more seats and creating more judges. There's been legislation introduced. The White House has set up a commission to discuss this. They'll take any opportunity they can to dilute any pro-life good news that comes out of this case.
Well, thank you both for joining us. It's a big news week. Thank you for breaking it all down for us. Mallory Quigley with the Susan B. Anthony List and John Bursch with Alliance Defending Freedom. The Secretary of Health and Human Services, Xavier Becerra, made headlines last week after failing to acknowledge there is an existing federal ban on partial birth abortions.
And you agree with this particular law?
Which law are we talking about, sir?
Law concerning partial birth abortion.
Well, again, as I said, there is no law that deals specifically with the term partial birth abortion. We have clear precedent in the law on the rights that women have to reproductive health care. And we, as I said in that confirmation hearing, we will follow the law.
That exchange happened during a House committee hearing last week on the HHS budget. Representative Gus Bilirakis of Florida asked Becerra if he agreed partial birth abortion is illegal. The HHS Secretary denied there's a medical term like partial birth abortion and said there is no law that deals with it. But Congress passed the Partial Birth Abortion Ban Act in 2003. Becerra, who was a California congressman at the time, voted against it. before President George W. Bush signed it into law. It outlaws when a baby is partially delivered and then an abortionist acts to kill the baby. Joining us now is Representative Gus Bilirakis of Florida. He happens to represent my hometown district in Florida. Congressman, welcome to the show. What was running through your mind as you were asking Secretary Becerra those questions about partial birth abortion, and he refused to acknowledge that procedure and even that term?
Yeah, it's really incredible, Catherine, that he did not acknowledge the procedure. The law has been on the books since 2003, as you know, and it was also reviewed by the Supreme Court and upheld. So, yeah, very disappointing. And again, he was really ignoring my question. But I did ask him if he would follow the law, and he certainly has an obligation to do so. And I got it on record that he said he would follow the current law. But it's really a shame that we have to push, these people in this administration to make sure that they protect life. And it's a very, very important issue to me, the sanctity of life. And I've always voted pro-life all my life. I was in the legislature, as you know, Catherine, for many years. And of course, this is my 15th year in Congress. And it's one of those issues that you do not hedge on. And we're going to hold this administration accountable when it comes to life.
Well, that brings me to my next question. Secretary Becerra has stated he will always defend the law, but is it concerning to you, Congressman, that our HHS Secretary does not seem to know that our nation has banned late-term abortion since 2003? As you reiterated, it was upheld by the Supreme Court in 2007. How can Becerra defend the law if he does not know the law?
Well, I think he knows the law. I think he was just avoiding the question. And he said that I did not use the proper terminology, and that's not the case. It's in the books. It's in the statutes as partial birth abortion. And it's just an awful, awful procedure. It's killing babies. And I'm so happy that Charles Kennedy was successful in 2003. He was also from Florida, from the Lakeland area. And he was the main sponsor of this particular bill. And as you said before, upheld by the United States Supreme Court. It is the law of the land.
Congressman, why did you want to press Secretary Becerra on this issue? What were you hoping to bring to the surface? Was it to get him on the record?
Yes, to get him on the record, to make sure that he enforces the law. It's his obligation as a secretary and a public official. But he has a history of not following the law when it comes to partial birth abortion, but also abortion in general. And I understand he voted against this particular bill when he was in Congress. So, yeah, we want to press him, and we want to hold them accountable, and we want to make sure that they enforce the law.
Secretary Becerra's agency, HHS, is currently trying to repeal pro-life protections to funnel more money into the abortion industry. We know Secretary Becerra and the Biden-Harris administration are aggressively pro-abortion. Congressman, is there anything you and Congress can do to advance life during this particular administration in this congressional term?
Well, we have to continue. I mean, we have a particular bill now to make sure we protect the children that are born alive. And we have some co-sponsorships, and we're trying to get this particular bill through a discharge petition on the floor of the House of Representatives as soon as possible. So we're going to continue to send the letters. We're going to continue to sponsor legislation and let the people know what's going on with this administration. And again, hold them accountable. Sure, we're probably going to have to play some defense, but life is so important to us. Everyone has a right to life. And I'm going to continue to fight to make sure that life is protected in all aspects. And it's a shame that you have a Catholic. Now, I'm Greek Orthodox, and it should be, and it is the number one issue for the Catholic community.
Absolutely.
And yeah, definitely. Again, the public officials, particularly the president and the cabinet officials, need to be held accountable.
Well, thank you for holding them accountable
we're trying to get the
so
word
much.
out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
thank
we're
you
trying to
so
get the
much
word out.
for holding them accountable and for
you.
getting the word out. Representative Gus Bilirakis of Florida, thanks for taking the time to come on.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
much.
Coming up, a well-known show on Hulu paints a false picture of pro-life pregnancy centers. I speak out next.
We love to share that there is healing after abortion. There is hope. We love to kind of like push aside the veil that covers the mercy of God.
Plus, an order of sisters dedicated to the protection of life share their journey of hope and healing for women who find themselves in an unplanned pregnancy. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Catherine Hadro. A popular show paints pro-life pregnancy centers as manipulative and deceptive. That is this week's Speak Out segment. The Handmaid's Tale, a popular Hulu series, is an American dystopian tragedy based on the 1985 novel of the same name. In it, world infertility has led to the enslavement of young, fertile women. Many creators involved with The Handmaid's Tale have been vocally pro-abortion and have compared pro-life laws to the show's plot of enslavement. And now, The Handmaid's Tale has gone a step further in its latest season by portraying pregnancy centers as manipulative.
So Janine, you're considering abortion as your first option?
Yeah, that's why I made the appointment.
Why is that?
Just wasn't exactly planned.
In season 4, episode 4 of The Handmaid's Tale, the character Janine has a flashback to a time she was seeking an abortion, but ended up at a pro-life pregnancy care center. Actress Madeline Brewer, who portrays Janine, spoke to The Hollywood Reporter about this episode. Brewer said in part, quote, "It felt important to me for people to hear what women who are seeking an abortion go through, the ways that they are manipulated." Pro-life pregnancy care centers do not manipulate. They tell the truth. They tell the mother the truth about her body and the truth of her baby growing inside of her. They tell her the truth that every woman is strong and the truth that there are resources to help her when she's pregnant and beyond birth. What a lazy plot line that Hollywood keeps pushing and that The Handmaid's Tale keeps trying to force. Let us pray that more and more people come to see it is not pro-life laws that enslave. It is the sin of abortion and our culture of death. An order of sisters in New York is dedicating their work to the pro-life mission. Montse Alvarado, host of EWTN News In Depth, spoke with the Sisters of Life about their faith in action. For this week's Pro-Life Focus, here is Sister Magdalene Teresa, superior of the Visitation Mission of the Sisters of Life, in her own words on their mission.
The Sisters of Life is a relatively young order, just 30 years old this year. But despite being in its infancy, it's growing quickly. Pope John Paul II diagnosed our growing societal problem. He said, "We live in a culture of death." And John Cardinal O'Connor in New York took that message to heart and inspired a group of women religious to counter that prognosis. The Sisters' mission? Promoting a culture of life, helping women in all stages of their lives.
Everyone starts with prayers. Prayer is our first work, and that is what it flows into our other works. So we have a couple of hours of prayer in the morning, including Mass and Holy Hour. Work begins after breakfast.
It sounds like you are far along. You are going to have a little girl.
Our time of calling women back who called yesterday. Maybe there'll be new calls.
The stuff that might be holding you back or holding you like...
We'll have women come in. We'll have what we call turnarounds, women who've been at a clinic but have turned around and come to us. We'll be meeting with them. It can be hours long. It can be, usually a new call is at least 45 minutes. And just walking them out of a place of fear to a place of freedom. is our biggest work. We also have a lot of extraordinary activities, which will be things like a baby shower. Like I mentioned, a cooking class. Earlier today, you saw we were painting something with the women. It's just a way to make them feel part of a family.
I know that you also have healing missions. It's not just about walking with someone who is in the middle of making the decision.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, yeah, because maternity is forever, that's a big principle that we live by, that a woman will feel a huge loss after her baby has been, that she has lost her baby to abortion. And so when she kind of comes to understand that, she will wrestle with that and need to walk towards healing. And I think that's a big grace that we love to share. We love to share that there is healing after abortion. There is hope. We love to kind of like push aside the veil that covers the mercy of God and be like, look at God's mercy. It's like a lighthouse. And so many of the women that we've served in the past who now, they've been able to trust God through the hardship of coming back to Him after suffering an abortion. And she becomes this big lighthouse of knowing that there's a way through the pain. And so they're the most gorgeous women because they know that there's been suffering, but they also know the absolute truth in trusting God through this. The Lord has only great invitations to holiness, to happiness, and He desires that, and He's pursuing her. But He's not going to force. The Lord will never force, so we need to meet Him halfway.
Promoting the dignity of all women and serving the whole woman through prayer. Montse Alvarado for EWTN Pro-Life Weekly.
What a beautiful witness. A big thank you again to host Montse Alvarado of EWTN News In Depth for traveling to New York City, speaking with the sisters, and bringing this story to us. That does it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Until next time, remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.